are you? Happy birthday. you would like to open the meeting.
All right, are we ready? Is everybody present and accounted for?
I believe so. We don't have Ms. Heckman or Mr. Keegan, but I'm sure they can jump in.
Okay, so I'd like to open the Education Policy Committee meeting tonight. On the agenda, we start with education. And Mr. Link, I think you're up with the review of the parent guardian feedback survey.
Thank you. And I'm getting a lot of echo, so if everybody wants to mute their mics, and I will walk us through. I'm getting a lot of echo, so if everybody wants to mute their mics.
Were you able to hear me?
And I will walk us through. I'm getting a lot of echo, so if everybody wants to mute their mics.
Were you able to hear me?
Okay. I will.
Matt, do you have YouTube on in the background?
Yeah. All right, sorry about that. Mr. Hill, that was it. I think it was because the YouTube station was up. My fault. Okay. All right, so we'll get going. I'm going to share my screen. As you recall, a little over a week ago, we closed the survey from the parents and guardians asking for feedback on the first month of school. It took, or actually the first 3 weeks of school, being 2 short weeks, and then our first full week of school. So we have those results in, and the administrators from each building level and in central office have been looking through the results of that. And I'm going to share that right now. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, is everybody able to see that slide, the first slide in the slide deck there? All right, I'm getting a thumbs up. Yep. And welcome, Ms. Heckman. It's nice to see you this evening.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to share out kind of the district level results for this. And then at the end, each building principal is going to share out the kind of like the major takeaways of positives and then areas that we still need to work on. And their comments are going to be based more on the open text boxes, the open response parts of the survey. And what I'm going to share with you is more of the kind of straight data. So you'll see that there's some charts here as we go through the slides. So first we asked, which school does your child attend? And you'll see that of the respondents, of which there were 660 total respondents, or 44% of the total district enrollment, 26.2% of the respondents were from Northern Lehigh High School. Northern Lehigh Middle School was 14.7%, and then Slatington Elementary was 33.9%, almost 34%, and Peters Elementary was 24.1%. Bulldog Academy made up about, I'm going to say about 1 to 2% of the responses. Again, 44% of the overall district responded, and that was a total of 66 responses. That's a little bit lower than our previous survey that we sent out. Actually, it's considerably lower. Our first survey, as we were heading into the school year, was a survey where we asked parents and guardians, what was your preferred model for your son or daughter to participate in going into the new school year? There we had about a little over 1,200 responses. I think that one their parents were much more maybe vested in, because that was their way of telling us if they wanted their son or daughter in a 5-day-a-week virtual, the hybrid model, or in Bulldog Academy. Our next slide is in which instructional model is your child currently engaged? And you'll see here overwhelmingly in the district, 84% of our students are enrolled in the hybrid model. So that's the A through L, M through Z model, Monday, Tuesday, off from being in the buildings on Wednesday, learning fully remote on Wednesday, and then M through Z are in the buildings Thursday and Friday. Just shy of 15% of our student body is doing the 5-day-a-week online model. And then again, about 1 to 2% are doing the Bulldog Academy model. We're doing something different with that this year with Mr. Weber is our point person, our district kind of facilitator for that for K through 8th grade. And then at the high school level, it's how we've traditionally done it at the high school, where we're using the eLearn 21 teachers and the administration, the school counselors, and even Mrs. Tiedelman, our librarian, is helping with that process. So we asked the question for the start of the second quarter, do you want your child to continue in his or her current model if we are unable to fully reopen the schools for 5 days a week? Overwhelmingly, the response was yes, they want to continue with the same model they're in if we are unable to fully reopen schools, and that's at 91%. Just a hair over 9% said that they are not happy, or they would prefer to change their model. Not necessarily that they are not happy, but they would prefer to change their model. And our building principals are reaching out to those families in the event that we cannot fully reopen schools, and to get further information. We can tell how each respondent answered. So our building principals are going to reach out to those families to see if they would like to go from 5 days a week into hybrid, or hybrid into 5 days a week, or if any of them would like to consider trying Bulldog Academy for the start of the second quarter. Next we asked the question, since last spring, have you seen improvements in your child's online experience? And 2/3 of the respondents said yes, they have. 1/3 of the respondents said no, they have not. So we're happy that the overwhelming majority of the respondents said that they have seen improvements. However, we're concerned that 1/3 of them said that they have not yet seen improvements. And keep in mind that at this point, this data is a little over a week old, and we've already started to really look at the open response answers to start sharing out with our faculty to say, okay, here are some areas that we can further address and further improve how we're delivering our methodology or delivering our instruction to our students, whether it's 5 days a week, the hybrid model, or Bulldog Academy. Oh, excuse me. So then we started asking, bear with me a second here. Okay, so then we started asking more questions about the daily amount of online work. So here where we're just talking about the volume, within the open response answers, they could talk more about the quality of online work. So for online work, we asked, is it the right amount, too little or not enough, or too much or overwhelming? And 69%, just shy of 70%, indicated that it's the right amount for whatever grade level that their son or daughter is in. 14% said it was too much or overwhelming, and 16.7, almost 17% said it was too little, not enough. Now, again, each building principal was able to sort their data down to their buildings just to catch their building grade span, and then from there kind of look to see, for trends within their own school buildings. Then we started asking about our communication. We want to make sure that we're communicating in an effective manner with the parents and guardians. So the first question was, is the communication from the district office the right amount, too little, or too much? Here, about 85% of the respondents said that it was the right amount. 12.9% it was too little or not enough. And I think that leaves us about let's see here, quick math, about 2 to 3% said it was too much or overwhelming. From the building principals, we asked the same question from kind of the building level administration, the building principals. And happy to report here that 88.3% of the respondents said they're getting the right amount of communication from their building principals. 9.5% said it was too little or not enough. So then again, that leaves about, what is that, about 2%, I guess, that said it was too much or overwhelming. Now, keep in mind, this is the percentages of the 660 responses, not the total district enrollment. but I think it's, if you get a 44% response rate on a survey, that's considered a good response rate. So I would classify this as representative of the district population. Here's about 73% of the teachers said that they were receiving the right amount of communication from their son and daughter's teachers. 25% or so said it was too little, and the remainder said that it was not enough. So in all these communication areas, we continue to drill down and try to get to that right amount response. Next question was, the next question where we have more just straight quantitative data, not the qualitative data. So that next question there was, since the start of the current school year, has your child had any mental health concerns? And if they responded yes, we're prompting them to reach out to their son or daughter's school counselor. 93% of the respondents said that their child has not had increased mental health concerns, which we are happy to hear. However, we're going to continue to monitor this. We know that the pandemic continues to place additional stressors on students and families. 7% said that yes, they have. So our school principals and our school counselors, and even some of our external supports like Knowlton Diagnostic, continue to be in contact with those families. If any of those families are watching right now and you responded yes to this and you have not reached out to your school counselor or your building principal, please do so. We have kind of different layers of supports that we can put in place for your children. Okay, our next response is, do you feel that your child is entering a safe and healthy environment for his or her school building? And here we're really kind of, getting at all the different protocols and interventions that we put in place to mitigate the effects of the pandemic virus from spreading within our buildings. And here, we're happy to share that 90% of the families responded that yes, they do feel that their son or daughter is entering a safe environment. And 10% said no. So although we're very happy with that 90% response rate, we're going to continue to do what we can to increase, cleaning, disinfecting, that type of stuff for students and staff as they come into the building. And, we're actually going to be talking a little bit more about that in our Buildings and Grounds Committee on Wednesday evening on some additional interventions that we may be able to put in place. So if you're not on that committee, but you're interested in learning more about it, please join us Wednesday evening. Okay, so that was the building, kind of district-wide, kind of balcony level view of those responses that we received from the survey. We can pause here before we go over to the principals. Does anybody on the committee have any questions about the district-wide responses?
I did, Matt. This is Mrs. Martineau.
Okay.
Mr. Link, sorry. Regarding the mental health portion of the survey, do you know offhand if we've had increased usage and reports from the Safe to Say link on our website?
So I can answer that. We've had 2 referrals from Safe to Say. And since I'm going to say, I believe the first one actually came in, I want to say the night before the first day of school. The second one came in maybe a couple weeks ago. So again, I believe there's only 2, maybe 3. I would say that's a pretty low frequency considering we have 1,500 students in the district. Principals help me out here. I think only one of those I would put in the bucket of like a mental health concern, but refresh my memory here. Feel free to chime in, principals.
I can say that one of them was actually the equivalent of a CYS call that was just filtered through us. It was actually a neighbor reporting an incident regarding a student.
That's correct. And you know what? Thank you, Mr. Pine, because you just jogged my memory. The other one was for a secondary student, and that was a new feature for Safe to Say, and that's called the Handle with Care feature. And what that one was that when any of our law enforcement agencies that work with the school district. So for us, it would be Slatington Police Department, Walnut Port Police Department, or the Pennsylvania State Police. If they have any sort of interaction with a student or their family, typically their family at home, which may have upset the child, they reach out to us now through the Safe to Say app to say, hey, listen, this student, a state trooper or a police officer had some sort of interaction with this student or his or her family last evening. And we just want to let you know that, check in with this student, keep eyes on this student the next day to see if they need any sort of additional support through the school day. And that's really all they tell us. They don't tell us any specifics other than, hey, just check in on this student, keep eyes on him, make sure that he or she is okay. And if they seem like they're off, just know that they had some sort of interaction with law enforcement, and you may want to reach out to them. Or if they come to you saying that they need to talk, please know that, please give them attention and be sure to work with that student. And honestly, I forget what the other one was. But Michelle, to answer your question, I would say that overall, we've had a low frequency of referrals now that we're a little over a month into the school year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Link.
Sure.
Mr. Martineau, Mr. Link, the other one was a high school student with a peer concern about questionable behavior that we utilized our counselor to work with the student.
Thank you, Mr. Velocity. And Mrs. Martineau, just kind of as an aside, they recently released all the data really for all last school year and through the summer, and Officer Nous had shared that out with administration at our last administrative meeting. And across the state, a lot of people thought that this Safe to Stay app would really hone in on potential acts of violence towards students and staff or the community even. And really the greatest number of responses greatest number of tips to Safe to Say had to do with mental health concerns for children. Both equally important types of tips, but overwhelmingly the tips do have to do with mental health concerns. And I would say we're trending that way here as well in Northern Lehigh. But, I think last year maybe had, I forget the total number last year, but I'm going to say probably less than 20 tips throughout the entire school year. So, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. My daughter's calling me right now and she never calls me. So I'm actually going to quickly answer this. Please forgive me.
Oh, please do.
So we'll go ahead and continue to go through the data from the standpoint of each of the principals. So Mr. Schneiderite, we'll start with you at Peters.
Sure thing. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all. To break down some of the things we saw regarding Peters Elementary in the data, I'll start with some of the things. The first one is regarding the improvement from last year. I'll say that at Peters Elementary School, that number was quite high, higher than the average. It was 70% felt that it was an improvement. And just to give you some of the narratives, even those who put it as it was not an improvement, a lot of the written narrative was more about the model itself and the fact that it wasn't 5 days a week rather than what we were doing within the model. So again, I take a lot of the frustration from parents as being the impetus for that answer at Peters Elementary School. I'll also tell you that the parents who chose 5-day virtual for their students absolutely love it. It was overwhelming that the students that felt unsafe to come back and the families of those students thought that that there was improvement across the board in what we're offering. So that was a big takeaway for us at Peters. Secondly, they thought throughout the school that it was great communication, which is always very important, especially when you're working on a school-wide basis to families within the community. And the other big takeaway of positives was safety. Again, I believe it was over 95% of the families at Peters Elementary School felt that they were entering a safe environment. And many of the people who answered no were actually people who chose the 5-day model anyway, because they felt in general that it was a no. So I think that answer may not have reflected what was actually happening in the building, but rather they felt sort of the world wasn't safe and they weren't sending their child back. So again, I think that's something as a building we should be, and as a school community, we should feel very proud of. Some of the challenges that came out and some of the ways we're addressing them. The number one challenge that was brought forth was just a general technology challenge. And I'll tell you, Mr. Hill and his team have worked really hard. I think we're over that initial bump of technology issues. And a lot of that was due to not understanding how to sign in, not understanding, it's a capital N, lowercase l, which, you wouldn't think was a big thing, but literally spent 3 days typing capital N's and lowercase l's because, every single family that had a problem logging in, it was really that. But there's also, again, there's still some general technology issues. We have some grandparents who are working with children, and, the parents may not have or might have the wherewithal to sort of lead the students through, but maybe the grandparents do not. So one of the things I worked on, and I'm almost complete, is creating basically a very, very, very simple click here, do this instructional video that I've already shared with kindergarten and first grade teachers to share out to families. And second grade, I thought I was done, but it was the last thing I did before I left today, and I wasn't so happy with it, so I'm going to finish it up tomorrow. But this, I hope, will be something that we can provide to families who have that initial struggle and are still working through some of the general technology needs, but, and give them basically a means of, let's watch this 7-minute video, and it'll take me step by step on how to log into Google Classroom and take me through what I'll have to do to get my child or grandchild or the child under my care to the right spot. The second big takeaway of sort of challenges for families is time. Obviously at the primary level, grades K1 and 2, a lot of what happens at home is reliant on parent involvement. So obviously we've taken some measures already within the district to make it easier for that to happen. But again, when you're working with 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, there's going to be an element there. And a lot of the struggles right now are, I work, I come home, I take my child out of daycare, I get home at 5 o'clock, and now there's 2 hours of work to do, and I've got to cook and clean and do whatnot. So that's a big challenge. And one of the things we're doing regarding that is making sure, obviously when the survey went out, it was like 3 or 4 weeks into what we were doing. We're working to sort of streamline our educational practices with the I4TL, Institute for Teaching and Learning. And we had a great, and again, the teachers at Peters Elementary School all participated in sort of a sharing session with them to show what we're doing and get some best practices on ways in which we can streamline some of the videos. And to be honest, I'm not sure there's a correct answer yet about how much work is the right amount. I think if you did the same thing every single day, you'd have a group of parents who say it's perfect amount. You'd have some that say it's too much and some that say it's not enough. So again, we're trying to basically find that happy medium in which we're able to provide the highest level of instruction while still streamlining it so to make it easier for families to be able to access and to get through the amount of work on the virtual level. And the final big takeaway as a big challenge that was posed by parents is really student engagement. Obviously, again, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, the attention span to sit in front of a video is not very long. If it's more than 8 minutes long, your brain goes. As a 25-year-old, after 7 or 8 minutes, my mind goes, right? So one of the things we're working on is, and Mrs. Cromer, our school counselor, has really done a great job, and most of you know Mrs. Cromer, she's just amazing, working with families and providing some strategies, for families engaging with students. And my hope is to turn those strategies into a sort of instructional video to help out at home. We're also working with those families and trying to meet with those students one-on-one. We actually, Mrs. Cromer and I had 1 or 2 meetings today with students to like sort of inspire them when they get to that virtual environment, that you've got to listen, you've got to be a great listener, and sort of take the principles of our school-wide positive behavior program that happen within school and help them transfer those to the home environment as well, because we want to try to, again, partner with parents and make it as easy as we can for them to be sort of oversee the virtual classes that are going on. So that thus ends my report. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
Not hearing any. Mr. Pine, do you want to roll into Slatington?
Sure. So I'll start off just in terms of the numbers in the survey. Similarly, we did perform, I think, pretty well in terms of improvement, just around 80%. The other big number that I'm proud of is that in terms of teacher communication, and I realize 82%, we're still looking for ways to improve, but the teachers have been working tirelessly to try and bring together, our families as partners more than ever before. And we realize there's a lot of challenges that come with that. And for them to come through and the parents to say that, they rate them at 82%, that yes, they are performing at the right amount, was another one that I'd really like to highlight. A lot of the other numbers ended up right around the district averages. In terms of comments, the two big positives that came out is, as Mr. Schneider pointed out, our virtual families are very, very happy. There was very little to say to improve in terms of what's going on with our students in the virtual environment for the 5-day virtual model. And then there was just also a lot of support in the comments, parents who recognize the challenges that we're facing, recognize the transition. And I'm very optimistic that patience and those comments in there, even over these past couple of weeks, have already started to turn into more positive outcomes, because this again has been an adjustment, and obviously struggles come with any adjustment of this nature, of this magnitude. In terms of takeaways, also like Peter's, motivation of students, particularly when they are working from home, was a huge issue. So Mrs. Mango and I have been working with families in order to come up with plans, sort of mirroring the same types of positive behavior support programs that we would put in place here in the school in order to encourage the behaviors we want to see. And then we're also working school-wide. Actually, we have a meeting on Wednesday again to talk about how to revamp the Schweb system altogether in order to really, and not that student academic performance and work and effort wasn't included before, but to really emphasize that, since that seems to be an area that the data is showing there's a high level of need. Another was challenges with navigating the multiple screens and systems within this. And we really did try to streamline those as much as possible. But those of us who have ever worked off one screen and had to do multiple tasks, navigating between tabs can be difficult. And it's proven to be a difficulty for our students and our families. And so that was kind of I think what we can see as a quick win. We're working last week and this week to send home as many hard copy materials as we can. So that way students have that as an additional resource to look upon while they're also working off of the screen. So we're hoping that removes the source of frustration that the families are feeling right now. And then the last one, which is a work in progress. I can't say that I have an easy answer for this one right now, is the ability to know that their students have completed all the work for the day when they come home. And so we've been doing a lot of videos, walking parents and students through how to access some of the different programs in addition to Google Classroom and PowerSchool. But I still would like to see us, I think that's a real focal point for us, is to continue to try to figure out how do we take all of these various programs that we need to build a robust curriculum and instructional program, and how do we make it at least as easy as possible for parents who are coming home to get a handle on, how did my son or daughter do today? Like, did they get everything done that they needed to get done? So if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pine and Mr. Schneider. I appreciate those updates. And Ms. Chamberlain.
Hello. I'm sorry, you're probably going to hear barking in the background. I don't know why my dog is barking and he won't stop. So I'm going to try and talk loud, as hopefully over him, and then maybe he will stop talking. So looking through the survey, some of the positive themes, of course, is everybody, I kind of feel like district-wide, it also affected, I guess, the middle school as well. our communication. The parents are satisfied with the amount of communication from the district to the faculty. There's the improvement for the spring. There was a 70% for the middle school felt that we improved from the spring. They're over 70% say it's the correct amount of work, and over 91% feel that they're entering a safe environment. I'm going to walk outside. I apologize because he's driving me a little. I'm sorry, my dog is barking.
Hey, Jill, that's okay. How about this? How about we go to the high school and then we'll come back to you once you get situated.
I am actually 2 seconds away from being outside. And whichever, shutting the door in his face. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. My apologies. I don't know why my dog is doing that. So with that, the main concerns for the middle school that we gleaned were the parents are struggling. The parents and the students are struggling, just as the other two gentlemen had said, to maintain a schedule at home and focusing on the work, and a lack of motivation on the students' part. So, which is middle school, not just a middle school phenomenon, but it's typical middle school. All of a sudden, the motivation to do their work or get their work done kind of slacks in middle school, and they're finding themselves. And the other theme that I noticed is a lot, we're asking for more of a virtual live streaming so that there could be more of a schedule for their student to be on. So in our plan to improve, we're going to continue to work with the families who are struggling. Mrs. Brown has done that. The faculty has done it. The faculty and staff, we're totally working with any families who are struggling. Lots of communication there. Continue to share with the parents their students' scheduled classes, and reinforce the use of Power School and the Google Classroom so that they're staying on top of things there. We also have been bringing some of our kids who decided to go full virtual really missed the tangible seeing the teacher, being with the teacher. We've had a lot return to our building to do the either 2-day or 4-day, especially with those who were learning support who decided to go full virtual. The parents realized that their child is struggling beyond just their identified disability and needed to be in the building. So we have been doing that. And on October 12th, my staff is having a training with Mr. Hill. Thank you, Mr. Hill, for live streaming and the use of the webcam so that they're more comfortable, so that we can start implementing more live streaming. So, because I feel like for the staff, if they realize that they live stream one class, they have the kiddos who are all virtual come live stream on the one class, it may alleviate some of the redundancy of work that they have to do in videotaping things when they can just live stream it. And then we have a set schedule for our students to follow of live streaming, and they'll be in attendance, and it will create a structure for the families. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Chamberlain? Okay, hearing none. Thanks again. And Ms. Chamberlain, I love the giant spider web behind you. Okay, Mr. Velasquez.
Good evening, everyone. From the high school perspective, parents and students' struggles and improvements were comparatively similar, where approximately a third of them stated that there were no struggles or improvements necessary. So that's a big kudos and pat on the back to the staff. I've also been contacted by many parents supporting our efforts and our decisions for this school year. However, the struggles and improvements that were identified were for more live instruction and communication or help from their teachers. So what we are planning to do is to address that on October 12th for professional development and organize professional support through Google Teams and I4TL at different times during the year. Then also, lastly, I just wanted to say that since the beginning of the school year, I've seen a trend increasing for our virtual option, about 5 per week. We start at 78% hybrid, 22% a combination of virtual and homeschool. And I believe that we will be closer to a 75-25% split by the end of the month. So that concludes my Reader's Digest version of our data. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions that anybody might have.
Okay, hearing none. And Mr. Lassie, that's interesting because, Ms. Chamberlain shared that there's more children coming back from the 5-day-a-week option to the hybrid option, or even for some of our students with special needs, the 4-day-a-week option. But I think that kind of makes sense because your students are a little bit older, a little bit more independent. So they may be looking to go to that 5-day-a-week online.
I will say this, Mr. Link, that I do have a lot more students that have IEPs opting for the 4-day-a-week. So, but that doesn't alleviate the other trend toward the other students that are opting for the full-time virtual. I have had maybe a handful of students with IEPs that wanted to go from the 4-day back to the 2-day. So I think that's kind of a wash, but I would agree with actually Mr. Schneiderite, Mr. Pine, and Mrs. Chamberlain as far as all the other positives and challenges that they had identified. I just had my swing is a little bit different, just because probably of the nature of the beast and the age of the students.
Absolutely. Okay, any other last questions or thoughts before we kind of transition here? Okay, hearing none. Again, I apologize that I had to take that phone call before for my daughter to actually pick up the phone and call me and not text. Everything's good. She just got her first college acceptance letter and she was very excited. And she also got an offer from the swim team as well. So, so she decided to actually call me and tell me that. So, again, I apologize for the interruption, but I'm a proud dad right now.
Oh my gosh, good for her.
Yeah, thank you.
Where?
Give her our best.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to welcome Mr. Gerald and Mr. Geist. We're going to transition into the policy section of the agenda this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stoker. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will, Dr. Stoker, I will take over taking notes. Yep, and I just froze. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you okay. And it looks like Dr. Stoker's screen is up now.
Okay, we can see what we have up there.
Yes, we can.
All right, so prior to me getting into the policies, I'm going to spend a little time kind of giving an overview. Everything that we have on the policy part of the meeting tonight is related to Title IX. So if I give some statements up front, kind of as blanket statements, I think that's going to cover a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening so that I don't have to go through every specific change within those policies. So essentially, just some background. In May, the U.S. Department of Education published final regulations regarding sexual harassment under Title IX of the Education Amendment of 1972. This is something that districts and educational entities have been waiting for some time. Title IX applies to education programs that receive federal financial assistance and prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, including sexual harassment. Until now, there was only guidance by the Department of Education for civil rights. Now there is binding federal regulation related to these areas. Some of the overall changes that we'll discuss tonight include narrowing the definition of sexual assault under the Title IX, limiting the obligation to investigate complaints only to conduct in our programs or activities, not ones that are related to off-campus conduct, mandatory response obligations for schools, including supportive measures, more detailed grievance procedures, optional hearings with written questions that are required for K-12. And then within these policies, we had the choice of selecting whether there needs to be a preponderance of the evidence, which means it's more likely than not, or if there had to be clear and convincing evidence, which essentially means evidence substantially greater than 50%. And then we had to have an appeal process for both parties. So you'll see a lot of those within our policies that we talk about this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the first one, which is Policy 103. I'm gonna try to get that all in there. All right. Policy 103 and 104 are very similar. Both of these policies cover much of the same things, only 103 is related to students and 104 is related to staff. So the titles of these policies were changed. This title of the policy was changed from non-discrimination, discriminatory harassment, school and classroom practices to discrimination, Title IX, sexual harassment affecting students. Again, this is the student umbrella policy for everything related to this. We slide down to the authority section. There's no discrimination included. So what we have here is the Title IX sexual harassment that has been included in this authority piece. We slide down to reports of Title IX sexual harassment and other discrimination and retaliation. One of the main components and what we had to change in our practice was we have to have an investigator, a compliance officer, a Title IX coordinator, and then a decision maker. Prior to this year, that used to be for the most part myself. So if anything was brought to my attention that was Title IX related or in many times sexual harassment, many times that came to me and I would do the investigation along with Sherry Molatoris, who's in our HR department. We would do the investigation. We would do all of the investigation with regard to the witnesses, take statements, and then come to a decision. Now, many times that involved principals doing some initial investigation or us bringing it to the superintendent for final decisions before we went back to the parties involved. Now we have to designate those roles a little bit more specifically. So our investigators in this are for the most part building principals. So especially with regard to students, they're going to be the first person that a student brings this to. So if a complaint is brought to anyone in a school building, that should go back to the principal, and then the principal is the first point taking the investigation and taking that complaint. And then if it rises to other levels, which we'll talk about, then it would go back to the compliance officer, coordinator, which will be myself, or eventually the decision maker, which continues to move up the chain. We continue to slide down. We had the choice of separating the compliance officer or the Title IX coordinator. Because of the size of our district, we really don't have that many different district office people that would need to have those as two separate positions. So the compliance officer and the coordinator for Title IX both fall to me or to whoever the assistant superintendent would be. So if for some reason the principal is unable to handle the investigation or is some way involved in the investigation, then that would rise to the Title IX coordinator to continue with the investigation. Okay, if we continue to scroll down. Confidentiality, again, is included in this policy for students. Obviously, if there's any report made, it's to remain of a confidential nature for both the person making the complaint and the person that is the alleged perpetrator. Retaliation, again, that the district standpoint is that retaliation is not acceptable, and there's some guidelines with regard to that. There are general definitions about the complainant, the alleged victim, discrimination in general. And then again, we get into some specific definitions with regard to Title IX sexual harassment. We continue to scroll down. We talked about there being supportive measures. So if we do have any complaints, we have to make sure that we're supporting those students. Some examples of that are counseling, modifications in class schedules, escorting students around campus, just measures to make them feel safer in the environment in which they're finding themselves. So it's designed to restore or preserve equal access to the education program or activity without unnecessarily burdening the other party, but protect the safety of all parties, and then to deter the sexual harassment that is being alleged. We continue to scroll down. Again, we get into the delegation of responsibility and those 4 categories that we talked about previously: the investigators, the compliance officer, the coordinator, and the decision maker. So again, we put the compliance officer and Title IX coordinator together, and we have to spell out who that person is and what their contact information is. We actually will be changing this email address. We do have an email address that is actually Title IX at NLSD.org. So in order to keep everything uniform and not be related to one specific person, but to be related to the specific role of assistant superintendent, we do have that email address that has been created and would automatically get bumped to myself or whoever the assistant superintendent is at that time. So we will be updating that in here. Okay, this talks about the compliance officer and what their responsibilities would be. So curriculum, training, resources, student access, district support, student evaluations, and then reports or the formal complaints. What you'll see following this is that much of the rest of this policy has been deleted. And that all pertains to all of the guidelines for how we handled the investigation, the reports, notifications. That's all been deleted and included in the administrative regulations. So along with these policies, there were several administrative regulations, and all of that information has now gone into those. So you'll see it deleted, but it hasn't disappeared. It's just in a different way. The concern, I think, here is that under this current administration, under our current president and our current Secretary of Education at the federal level, this policy has changed, and depending on who becomes our next president and whether or not we have a different federal Secretary of Education, this policy may revert to something similar to what it has been in the past. So they tried to put those into administrative regulations so that that can be changed more easily, and the main kind of umbrella piece of this in the policy. So then the next piece talks about the sexual harassment training requirements. And these are all of the areas in which we have to train people. They include what a definition of sexual harassment is, how we actually go through and make reports, use of technology, any of those types of areas that are related to this policy. We have to train everyone on that, and we have plans to do that moving forward. And then disciplinary consequences. So any student who is found to be responsible or in violation of this policy, these are some of the things that would be punishments or consequences of that. So loss of school privileges all the way up through expulsion and referral to law enforcement. The next part is reports of discrimination, and then reports of Title I or Title IX sexual harassment. So that just talks a little bit more detail about what those are going to look for. And if you see, they keep referring back to attachments. So in this one, reports of discrimination are actually included in AR number 2, and reports of Title IX sexual harassment are in attachment number 3. So we have 2 reporting forms, and what happens is if it's not deemed sexual harassment, then it's actually deemed discrimination. There's a different report form to fill out for those. So that's at policy 103, that's related to students. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to jump into policy 104. 104 is
Dr. Stoker, if I may, I'm going to look to the board members on the committee tonight. Are you all comfortable if we take this to the October 12th board meeting for first reading?
Mr. Fedorcha, Mrs. Heckman?
Yes.
Yes.
Looks like it's a go. We're the only
Okay.
three here, correct?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Link. I buzzed right past that part.
That's quick. It's okay.
All right, number 104. So this is very similar to the policy that we just covered. Much of the language is the same. The only difference, again, is 103 is the blanket policy for students. 104 is the blanket policy for any of our staff members. So if you look at the board authority, you're going to see what you see in policy 103. The same thing for, as we continue to scroll down, much of this is the same. It talks about the reporting form. It talks about going to the building principal or building administrator. And then if it is found to be, sexual harassment under Title IX, that it should go to the Title IX coordinator. The difference is now we're talking about employees. So you'll see things in here like administrative leave. So there'll be some consequences or some steps that we can take related to faculty where it's different for students. So you'll see administrative leave is something that is different under 104 versus 103. Again, confidentiality is similar. So we want to make sure that we keep it confidential if it's a student or if it's a faculty member. Again, retaliation, we want to make sure that no one is being retaliated against for any kind of report. The definitions, again, are very similar to what is in 103. We talk about discrimination in general, and then we talk about discrimination as it relates to Title IX and sexual harassment. Then we have some options for adults. So these are a little bit different than the supportive measures that we would have for students. So we can use our employee assistance program, leaves of absence, and some of our outside services. So you'll see that these are a different list of some of the supportive measures that we can give to adults versus students. Okay, then we'll continue to scroll down. Again, these are similar to what we have in policy 103. Some of the numbers did get thrown off a little bit when they got copied over into a shared doc, so those will be fixed. Again, the delegation of responsibility, we have the Title I coordinator and compliance officer as the same person, and then we have our decision maker as someone separate. The information is in the policy of who that is going to be. And again, we'll go ahead and update that email to reflect our general email address that we created. Again, that the compliance officer, Title IX compliance officer, is again in charge of review of these policies, training, resources, the final reports and complaints. And then again, you'll see a big chunk of the policy regarding the guidelines all deleted. And again, that's been put into the AR. And then at the bottom again, you'll see training requirements. So the training that we have to provide and what areas it needs to cover. Again, very similar to what's in 103. Disciplinary consequences, reports of discrimination, and then reports separate Title IX sexual harassment. Again, you'll see regarding attachment 2 and regarding attachment 3. So those are the two separate ARs that we would use for any reports under this policy for staff. Are there any questions on this policy? Hearing none, do we have the approval from the school board to move this to our board meeting in October for approval for a first reading.
Jerry, yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dr. Stoker. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, our next one is hazing. Hazing is a required policy. There are just some minor changes to this one to reflect consistent terminology for the Title IX sexual harassment and the Title IX coordinator. So on page 3, again, this big section at the top, you'll see rather than just harassment and discrimination, it now refers to it as Title IX sexual harassment and other discrimination. There is the addition of not just the compliance officer, but the Title IX coordinator. Those new terms are added there. At the bottom of this page, you'll see they, where we start to just refer to students not as he or she, but you'll see some just general terms throughout here as well. Under confidentiality, they added in that confidentiality of all parties, witnesses, and the allegations, the filling of a complaint, and the investigation shall be handled in accordance with applicable law, regulations, and that the policy and the district's legal and investigative obligations. So just a couple words added in there. Again, here they took out he and she and said the individual. And then they took out he or she and said the coach, sponsor, or volunteer in that section. And again, that one is related to hazing. So it talks a lot about our extracurricular activities and anybody that would lead those activities or anybody that would be participating in those activities, students or adults. Any questions on those changes or this policy? Hearing none, do we have the permission from the board to move this to a first reading in October at our board meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Heckman?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Stoker, move it forward.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, our next one is bullying and cyberbullying, policy 249. Again, this is another required policy. This is another policy that just involves very small changes just to upgrade the terminology to be consistent with the other policies that we're dealing with. So on page 2, you'll see that we took out the words discrimination or discriminatory harassment and are now calling that Title IX sexual harassment and other discrimination. And then you'll see that compliance officer and Title IX coordinator are now one and the same. So we've added those terms in there. And those are the only changes to the bullying and cyberbullying policy. Any questions on that?
Mm-mm.
Hearing none, do we have the ability to move that to the board level for first reading in October?
Yes.
Mrs. Heckman?
Yes. Sorry. I keep pressing the button and there's like a delay.
Okay, Dr. Stoker, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. All right, our next one is 317.1, Educator Misconduct. This is not a required policy, but it is a recommended policy for legal liability purposes, and it is a policy that we've had since 2016. So again, we're just making some additions to this to be consistent with everything that's in the Title IX regulations. So on page 4, you'll just see that this has been added. Title IX, sexual harassment and other discrimination, that this has been updated to address circumstances when allegations underlying a report of educator misconduct include conduct that appears to constitute Title IX sexual harassment and other discrimination. So that paragraph that you've seen consistently through the policies we've discussed so far has just been added to this policy as well. And then under confidentiality, we also added through PSBA, except as otherwise provided in the Educator Discipline Act, all information related to any complaint, any complainant, or any proceeding related to discipline under the Educator Discipline Act shall remain confidential unless or until public discipline is imposed. So they just added another reference to the Educator Discipline Act there. Again, those are all the changes for this policy. Any questions on educator misconduct?
No.
Hearing none, do we have permission to move this to the board level for first reading in October?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Stoker.
Thank you. And the last one this evening related to Title IX is Policy 824, maintaining professional and adult student boundaries. Again, this is a recommended policy, but this is a policy we have had since 2017. So we have updated this one also to include those changes. So on page 5, under exceptions, this is related to us being in a digital environment, a virtual environment. So it says an emergency situation or a legitimate educational reason may justify deviation from the rules regarding communication or methods for maintaining professional boundaries set out in this policy. So what they have is they've just, we're doing meetings like this virtually. We're doing a lot of things that we typically handle in person, like investigations or paperwork in person. Or hard copy. Some of those things now have to be done virtually. So this actually is that implementation in a digital environment. On the next page, page 6, this section, reporting inappropriate or suspicious conduct, was updated to include the reporting method of using a new form. So all of these policies that have kind of been strung together under the Title IX umbrella, there's the reporting form that we've been talking about, which is essentially AR number 1 for almost all of these policies. This just refers to that, and that document that would be filled out to report such behavior. A little bit further down, again, it clarifies the Title IX coordinator position again. And then instead of having within 15 days, it's now promptly but no later than 15 days. So they've just changed the wording of that time. Instead of saying it's a violation of this policy, just a violation of board policy, in the event that it actually is a violation of larger policy than just this one. Under investigation, this has been updated to include the responsibilities of the Title IX coordinator in assessing and addressing reports of discrimination or Title IX sexual harassment. So again, very similar to what we've been seeing updated through the rest of the policies. And those are the rest of the changes for that one. Any questions on this policy?
No.
Hearing none, do we have permission to move this for a first reading at the board level next week?
Yes.
Mrs. Heckman? Are
Yep.
you good? Okay, Dr. Stoker.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you all for your patience. This was a large group of policies to update this evening. So we have the 6 policies that are on the agenda this evening. And I think we had somewhere between 10 and 15 administrative regulations that had to be updated as well. So all of those have been updated. Once these policies are passed after the second reading, hopefully in November, they'll be sent back to PSBA to make sure that they're as there should be. And then all of those ARs that we have will then be published if they are ones that have to be attached to the policies on our website. Some of them include letters that get sent out to families. So it's like a form letter. If a student is being accused of something or an adult is being accused of something, then there are form letters that go out to families letting them know that they're part of that investigation or that somebody has been accused. So those are not things that we would publish on the website. We would keep those form letters in-house and then use them as necessary. But everything else, like the form that it gets reported on, those things will be attached to the policy once we get them back from PSBA. Okay. All right, thank you. And I believe that concludes our education and policy agenda, unless anyone has anything else under education or policy this evening.
Do we want to ask Mr. Hill for questions or comments from the community?
Yes.
We do not have any questions or comments at this time.
Okay. So the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Monday, November 2nd.
Correct.
All righty. So with that, let's close this meeting and open the extra and co-curricular meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to excuse myself at this time.
Okay. And I
Thank you,
believe-
Dr.
Good night, Dr. Stoker.
Dr.
Good night,
Stoker, you
Thank
did
you.
a great job.
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Stoker, you did a great job with all that. She's been working on those for weeks, probably even months at this point. And you know, all your time is greatly appreciated. And finally, Dr. Stoker, I would like to say happy birthday. Enjoy the rest
Thank
of your
you.
evening.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Thanks.
Dr. Stoker.
Thank you very much.
Wait a
Thank you.
minute, Dr.
Thank you.
Stoker, is today your actual birthday?
It is.
Today is also my birthday.
Well, happy birthday
Wow.
to you too.
Yeah.
Happy
you.
birthday,
Should have
Mrs.
had a
Heckman.
cake.
I read an article last year that said October 5th was the most common birthday, so I'm not
Wow.
surprised that we have the same birthday.
It is. Happy birthday to you too. And thank you, everybody. Have a nice night.
Take
See ya.
care.
You too. Enjoy
Happy
your
birthday.
evening.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Heckman.
Yes, Mrs. Michelle, and I believe you're going to take over as chair.
Thank you. Okay.
As co-chair, since Ms. Husak cannot be with us this evening.
Got it. Okay.
So if you want to open the meeting.
Okay. So do we have, is Mr. Geist on the meeting?
Mr. Geist is on.
I am here.
All right, perfect. So who is doing the update on fall sports?
I can give an update on that, Mrs. Heckman. We have, as all of you are well aware, we started July 1st screening all of our athletes, coaches, and now officials as well as they come into the stadium. We've had great success. All of our athletes have done everything we have asked them to do. Our coaches have asked them, they've done everything we've asked them to do. Our parents and nuclear families have done everything we've asked them to do. We've had a lot of great success. We currently do not have any confirmed cases. We are taking all the precautions that have been laid out to us by St. Luke's University Health Network, our health partners, and we've been playing games. So we've had some great success. We are following the protocols by the Colonial League as well, and we hope to continue that success throughout this fall.
It's wonderful. I really can't thank you enough for the transparency of everything you've been doing. Just looking at that first list of attendees to try to see, you know, when we didn't know, was it going to be 250 people? Was it going to be more than that? Just making that list of who's going to be at that first varsity football game from the, you know, visiting school, and just compiling that list looked like a ton of work. And that is obviously not even a percentage of everything that has gone into the entire fall sports season. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that the parents of Northern Lehigh School District have been so gracious, complimentary, and thankful for being able to come in and see contests. So I just want to echo that to kind of put that so that you hear that as well. There has not been any negative comments that I've heard or my staff has heard. So I just wanted to echo that everybody has been so gracious and thankful and really appreciates their ability to come to watch the games.
That's great news.
It's amazing.
I think we're lucky in this community.
That's what I was going to say. We have a great school, a great community, and thank you also, Mr. Geis, for much of the things, not some, all of the things you've done to make sure that this went. And there was a lot of sweating on not only my part, I think others, as to how it would go. And compliments to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can only compliment the game staff that's in place for contests. They've done everything that we've asked them to do, and they're kind of the first face of Northern Lehigh. When people come in, they see them, and they've been very professional, and we've handled things I think really well, and I appreciate the compliments and the kind words.
Great. Mr. Hill, do we have any public questions or comments about this bullet point?
We do not. There are no comments or questions at this time.
Okay, perfect. Does anyone else on this meeting have any questions about this specific bullet point before we move on?
I would just like to compliment Mr. Geis. I call him 2, 3, 30 times a day, just checking in on the status of where we are with the planning. And he always has an answer. It's always well thought out, and he always has a contingency plan in case we need to pivot at the last minute. So, Mr. Geis, you're doing a phenomenal job. And, that's to you, to your coaches, to the athletic trainers, and really just thank you for all the work that you're putting into this fall season.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Geis, would you care to transition into the next bullet point, which is kind of more of a question, actually? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Link. Ultimately, we've had games and we've had reduced seasons, and there's some different types of planning that we have going on. Just as an example, PIAA in the sport of soccer allows 18 games. We've played 9, or we're scheduled to play 9. The PIAA is allowing schools to play as many up to 18 regular season contests of any sport. And what I'm looking for is a comfort level of, or at least an idea on where we can go. Now, there's part of this that we need a dance partner as well. So if the answer is, yeah, go ahead and schedule as many games as you want, then we still need people to play. The other thing is we have district playoffs that are coming up, and right now we have a couple teams that are looking like they're going to make district playoff spots. So just kind of getting an idea and a feeling, can I try to maximize the number of contests, or should we just say, hey, let's roll into the district playoffs, see how we do in there, and then start planning for winter. So hopefully that explains what I'm kind of looking for at this point.
Mr. Geis, just a clarifying question. Is it up to 18 games per sport, or whatever the normal max number would be for each sport?
Yeah, each sport has a specific max number. So as an example, football max number is 10. We're scheduled to play 6. Any playoff games do not count towards regular season contests. Those are above and beyond. Scrimmages do not count towards that regular season number either. So in the sport of soccer, you're looking at 18. Cross country, you just can't get there. That's an impossible number to get there. So each sport has their own specific number.
Thank you.
Mr. Geis, this is Gary. Really, on my part, I really can't even venture to tell you which way to go on this one. But is basically knowing what you do know about scheduling and the amount of games that we need to play, we're all going to play with the playoffs coming in. Do you have a recommendation?
My recommendation is kind of feel out some of the opponents that we've had on our schedule that we haven't played, and see what their feeling is. I don't want to schedule somebody like halfway across the state. I'd like to stick to teams that were on our schedule originally and see if there's any interest to play. If their season's over, our season's over. Hey, you want to get a game or two and go from there. As an example, field hockey, we were scheduled to play some games early on. Maybe we could play maybe a game against Lee Heighton or somebody close in our league that's looking for a game like a Salisbury. So that's kind of like what I'm looking for. Again, I'm not looking to go halfway across the state or anywhere to different places. I'm looking for teams that were originally on our schedule to see if there's any interest.
I have a question, Mr. Geis. This is Mrs. Martineau. Are for these additional games, and excuse me for not being versed in the sports world,
Sure.
these additional games would we be able to invite college scouts and things like that to those games as necessary if that is appropriate, since they, some of the games you said were missed in the beginning of the year?
That's a tricky question because right now our guidance does not allow college scouts to come to contests. A lot of college scouts are using the Huddle package, the video package of Huddle, or any type of video streaming that we have. And that kind of takes me to another thing. Our Pixelot system has been working out really well in our stadium. So we've had a number of views on that. So if the guidance changes at that particular point, then absolutely scouts would definitely come for those contests.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Geis, is it fair to say then, based on what I've heard you say, that we would be looking at other Colonial League teams if we were to add games?
Yeah, other Colonial League teams and possibly Lee Heighton. That would be the non-league game. And since they're a neighboring school district, they're in our geographic region.
Understood. Knowing what we know so far, this far into the season for fall sports and the systems that Mr. Geis and our high school administration, Mr. Velocity, Mr. Hauser, our school police officer, Mr. Nals for security around the games and just kind of making sure everybody's compliant. I would say as your superintendent that I'm comfortable with this. If we keep it to Colonial League and Lee Heighton, limit the travel, and knowing that all teams may not be available anyway, but I'm comfortable with Mr. Geis putting the feelers out to see if anybody would like to add in games up to the cap for that particular support.
Are you looking for us to make some decisions here? Or suggest?
It may be easier if anybody is opposed to it, if they would just like to,
Right.
voice that and share their logic, and maybe that person has a good reason.
I agree. Otherwise, I support it. Go ahead.
Are we voting for the final decision tonight, or are we voting to move this to the full board Monday?
I don't know that this would not be a change to our health and safety plan or the sports resocialization plan, and it would work within the confines of what was already approved with sports, with spectator viewership. All the systems are already in place, so I'm just kind of looking to see really if this committee supports it, and I think that would give us enough to move forward.
I agree. I don't think it would be a business item at all unless we had some major changes that we had to make some kind of a motion on, and that's not happening. So I would turn it back to you, Mrs. Heckman, to move wherever.
Yeah, as this is Mrs. Martineau, I just want to say that I support it.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what Mr. Geis said, within reason. Obviously, we don't want to be playing people that live 4 hours away, but if
Sure.
our neighboring districts, are participating beyond that time frame, I think it's reasonable. So I think this committee says yes, even though we're not voting on it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Geis, does that give you enough direction to start making contacts?
Yeah. Absolutely. And again, I need a dance partner as well, so I can't really promise, but I might be able to pick up a couple extra games.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Geis.
Sure.
Okay, up next on the agenda, we have a topic of disc golf. And Mr. Gerald is going to speak to this in a minute, but just to kind of give you a little bit of the background, you may recall this conversation came up really, I think I want to say probably the fall of last school year, maybe even the summer before that. And we partnered with Northern Lehigh Recreation Authority to write a grant to submit to the Iron Pigs Foundation to help pay for the installation of the disc golf baskets, goals that we already have. They were donated from the borough of Slatington. Unfortunately, we were not successful in receiving that grant. So we still have the equipment in storage. And Mr. Gerald had approached me recently to kind of come up with a scaled back plan to maybe how we can address exposing more of our student body to this sport, to this recreation. I know that even our elementary teachers have been integrating these skills into their curriculum. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gerald to give more of a detailed description of the plan, of his proposed plan.
Thank you, Mr. Leake.
Sure.
Good evening, everybody. I'm pretty sure that description was, for the most part, pretty detailed. So we did receive 9 baskets we have on Northern Lehigh grounds, donated from Slatington. We did not receive the grant, so I'm just looking for approval to begin the installation of those baskets ourselves through staff members that play disc golf that are willing to help, students after school that are willing to help. I know that the Patriot Club that I am the advisor for, they've been looking for a student-centered way to give back to the community. I know we do a lot of veteran-type things for our community, but one of the goals for our club is to do something that's more student-centered. And it really doesn't cost a lot of money to install baskets. It's a little bit of concrete, metal sleeve for the basket to be installed in, and T-pads can be pretty generic as well, with a piece of outdoor carpet and a piece of PVC for a toe guard, until funds and or fundraising may become available to upgrade conditions for T-pads to stone or concrete, etc. In 2018, myself and Denny Barr walked the grounds on Northern Lehigh. Denny Barr, for those of you that don't know, is a course designer for many of the courses in the Lehigh Valley. He designed Neffs, Covered Bridge, Onalani. He's had a hand in other ones, revamping of other ones like Camp Olympic. He's consulted for other courses in the area, and unique to Lehigh Valley, there's around 20, maybe more courses within 30 minutes of Lehigh Valley that people play. And it's a great lifetime activity. And if I can get these baskets installed, then I can start using those in my high school curriculum.
Mr. Gerald, how many, what would be your target for like an initial installation? How many baskets?
Well, it'd be nice to start with at least 3. We did walk the grounds, and the best probably place to begin installing baskets is that patch of woods between the field house and the parking lot for the district office in Slatington Elementary. There's a nice little string of woods right there. Also, that upper field where the discus and jab can be used to throw across there for a nice long shot. And that's where I began. It'd be nice to start with 3. Actually, a lot of the labor is in clearing alleys from T-pad to basket. And that's nice and thin in there, so it shouldn't be, too troublesome with removing brush.
Mr. Gerald, this is Mrs. Martineau. Have you considered reaching out to the local Boy Scout troops looking for service hours?
Yeah,
I know.
There's been a lot of Boy Scouts that have come through the high school looking for Eagle Scout projects, and that is definitely on my radar as make it a point to contact them for anyone looking for things like that.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Gerald tonight? What I would ask then is I'd I would like this process to be kind of twofold because it overlaps two committees. ECC tonight because of the availability for some of our clubs to participate, our current clubs to participate in a way to get back to the greater school district, the greater student body for an installation of courses, which is why I wanted it initially to come here. But because we're also talking about the grounds of the school district, I think it's appropriate that we also revisit the conversation Wednesday evening to get the input of Mr. Durr as well. He had some ideas on how his department could assist with keeping costs down for some of the installation, like when it comes to cutting the sleeves, the length, and so on. So for this evening, I'm looking to see if the board members on this committee would support us taking this conversation then to Buildings and Grounds on Wednesday evening, kind of for final consensus to approve Mr. Gerald and his cooperating students to install, for now, I would say up to 3 baskets, and we kind of do that as proof of concept to see how it goes for maybe extending the program to more baskets.
I support that.
Definitely.
This is Mrs. Martineau.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to go to the Buildings and Grounds also, but I think we should move it on.
Okay, Mr. Gerald, would you be able to join us then Wednesday evening, just to kind of walk the members of the Buildings and Grounds Committee through the conversation as well?
I do have another appointment, but as long as the times don't conflict, I can make myself available.
Very good, thank you. And
Mr. Link, maybe what we can do, because it's Building and Grounds, and that is in the beginning. And those committees, by the way, Mr. Gerald, are much shorter than these two have been. So you sat through probably one of the longest committees that we have, and that's our education policy. I would say we could probably move him up early in the time if he's available at the beginning.
Those committees start at 5:30. We can make it agenda item number 1. If that conflicts with your other appointment, we can bounce it to the end of the committee, whatever works for you. And if you can't make it, I'm comfortable speaking to the process as well.
I can be there as soon as I can. I've got a dentist appointment, the whole family's going. So as soon as we get out of there, I'll log on.
How about this? We'll put it at the end of the committee then. And if you're not able to log on, I'll start the conversation. And if I have to, I will wrap it up as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gerald.
Thank you.
Mr.
And
Hill,
I'm sorry.
I think we were going to say the same thing, Mr. Link, but I was going to ask if there's any other public questions or comments.
Yes, we do have a comment from Andreas Hassold. He said that he is a Cub Scout den leader and he would help support that.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Hassold. And
Great news.
So maybe if you would like to email Mr. Gerald directly, and that is sgerald@nlsd.org. And maybe we can get some sort of cooperative going there.
That's great. I think getting community and the school together as much as we can is extremely important, especially right now with there's so little that we can be doing anymore together. So that's great. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, Ms. Heckman, that's all the agenda items we have this evening. Mr. Hill, was there any other comments?
Nope, that was the only comment. That's all we have for now.
Okay, great. Well, then I think we can move to close the meeting.
Okay. And again, happy birthday, Michelle.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yes, happy birthday. Do you get a baby break, I hope?
No. No.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Good night.